In the year 1574, the streets of Lisbon pulsed with the scent of salt and citrus, the city alive with the energy of discovery and trade. Ships came and went from the harbor like breath, carrying spices, silk, and stories from lands half believed in. Among the labyrinth of alleys and tiled courtyards lived Isabel Duarte, a woman who had learned long ago that survival came by silence and success by disguise. On paper, she was Don Duarte's son, Raphael, an apprentice to the royal cartographer. In truth, she was the cartographer herself, every line inked on every map, every coastline corrected, had passed through her hands. Her father, once a master map-maker in his own right, had raised her to read the language of landscapes as easily as poetry. He had died poor and bitter, his talent eclipsed by politics and gender. Isabel had kept his name alive by assuming a false one, donning men's robes and keeping her head down, letting others take credit for her precision. She did not resent it. She had accepted it as the way of things. That changed the day she found the map. It was a brittle scroll, buried in a sea chest that had been dragged from the belly of a wrecked caravel. The sailors thought it junk worm-eaten and too faded to read. But Isabel saw its potential. Under candlelight, using a solution of lemon juice and steam, the lines reappeared. Not a duplication of known coastlines, not some sailor's fanciful rendering, but something altogether new. It showed a sliver of land in the South Atlantic, well beyond the charts, in waters believed empty and perilous. The island was shaped like a broken crescent, with glyphs not in Portuguese, Latin, or Arabic, but something ancient, something that stirred memory without recognition. She tried to set it aside. She tried to forget. But night after night her mind returned to that strange arc of land. Who had drawn this? When? And why was it buried so carefully? Within weeks, Isabel had redrawn the map in secret, copying it onto clean parchment, and hiding it beneath the boards of her chamber floor. Her hands trembled when she worked. To challenge the accepted boundaries of the known world was not just a scholarly risk, it was heresy. But the map whispered possibility. It was not ambition that drove her. It was wonder. She had grown up in the shadow of Lisbon's age of discovery, watching men praised for stumbling upon places long lived in. She wanted to go not to conquer, not to claim, but to see. Her resolve hardened when a Jesuit priest, Father Thomas, visited the workshop. He carried questions wrapped in pleasantries. He asked about old scrolls and mystical geographies. He asked about signs and symbols, and his gaze lingered too long on the chest where the map had first been found. When he left, Isabel waited until dark, then burned every trace of the original scroll. But she kept her copy. She approached an old friend of her father's, a retired captain named Estevao, who lived on the outskirts of the city with a drinking problem and a telescope turned always to the sea. When she showed him the map, he stared at it for a long time without speaking. "I saw this," he said at last, "or something like it. In 51, a storm blew us off course. We passed a shape like this. Rocks, cliffs, fire in the hills. No one believed me." He turned to her then, and his voice was hoarse. "You want to go there?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Over the next 2 months they prepared, quietly, with care. Estevao found a small crew men with debts, men who asked few questions. Isabel posed as a young nobleman seeking to fund a speculative journey. The king's approval was not sought. This was a voyage that would live or die in shadows. When they finally left Lisbon under cover of dawn, the sky was the color of pewter. Isabel stood at the prow, cloak whipping in the wind, heart full of questions. The days at sea blurred together, a rhythm of salt and sails. She studied the stars each night, using her father's tools, adjusting their heading by degrees. Weeks passed. Then one morning a call came from the crow's nest. Land. It looked just as the map had promised. A crescent isle with cliffs like jagged teeth, its slopes green and wild. But there were signs of habitation, ancient stone, ruins, overgrown paths, symbols etched into rock. No one lived there now, yet everything suggested someone once had. And in a hidden cavern, Isabel found what she never dared imagine, a cache of maps, older than anything she had seen, preserved in waxed containers. They showed not just this island, but entire coastlines that did not match the world she knew. Rivers where no rivers existed, mountains where deserts now stretched, and writing articulate, intricate writing describing seasons, flora, constellations, long lost to time. It was not just a discovery, it was a rewriting. When they returned to Lisbon, everything had changed. Whispers met them at the docks. Father Thomas was waiting. He had been following, it turned out, since the moment she touched the scroll. What she brought back threatened not only maps, but the Church's order, the monarch's authority, the myths of conquest. Isabel stood before them, all no longer Raphael, no longer silent. She named the island, not for herself, but for her father. She revealed the ancient knowledge, not as conquest, but inheritance. The world was older than their books allowed, wider than their ships could measure. Truth had waited patiently, buried in the folds of time, until someone remembered how to read it. She did not live without challenge. But her name at last was known. And the maps she left behind? They told a different story, not of borders, but of wonder.